Have you ever ventured into the shadows of the unknown in search of hidden truths? In Holloway, a village where mysteries are woven into the eternal mists, Eleanor is about to confront the secrets that will redefine her family's history. In the mysterious heart of Holloway Village, always shrouded in the mist that dances among the ancient trees, secrets kept by time whisper to those brave enough to listen. At the top of a hill, the old Holloway House stands like a sentinel, its dark structure seeming to absorb any trace of light, repelling the gaze of the curious, but not Eleanor. To the villagers, the murmurs of disappearances were just that, murmurs. But for Eleanor, every word was an invitation, a riddle waiting for her, calling for attention. "Are you really going there?" Hugo asked, his concern seeping into every syllable. He glanced at the house, as though he could sense an uneasy rhythm within it, a flexible and sinister breath. The house hides something. It's not safe. Eleanor's heart beat strongly, driven by the need to unveil the silence surrounding the grandparents, who mysteriously disappeared without a trace, leaving only gaps in her grandmother's heart, who refuses to speak of the past. "I need to know, Hugo. They're my grandparents. They disappeared, and Grandma never talks about it." The curiosity inside her was a flame impossible to extinguish. The house, with its unreachable secrets, was a promise of answers that the family had always avoided. Hugo hesitated, his eyes mirrors of genuine apprehension. "What if you discover something you don't want to see? Some things should stay buried." He turned his head with a gesture of helplessness, hoping to steer her away from the idea. "You might end up getting hurt. But what if I don't move forward? What if everything stays like this, cloudy and unanswered?" The firmness in Eleanor's voice was that of someone who had already made up her mind. The truth, even if harsh, seemed more inviting than the silent deception in which she lived. The weight of her family's history hung like a shadow over the mists of the hill. The tension between them became almost tangible, a bond of friendship almost on the verge of breaking. As Eleanor gazed at the distant house, a crystal-clear resolution formed in her mind. The ghosts of the past needed to be confronted, and she would do it. As she plunged into the mists of Holloway, Eleanor was enveloped by memories of her childhood. In the warmth of the home, her grandmother would tell stories by the fireplace. In those days, the words echoed, painting vivid scenes of the house on the hill and the secrets resting there. They were tales of love, pain, and disappearances that captivated listeners with an air of mystery. These stories planted a seed of curiosity in Eleanor that grew into a burning desire to understand more about her grandparents and what had truly happened. One morning, while rummaging through her grandmother's attic, Eleanor found an item that captivated her like no other discovery had before. It was a small, intricately carved wooden box, its appearance suggesting it belonged to her grandparents. Inside, as she carefully and hesitantly opened it, she found old letters and a black-and-white photograph of a youthful couple. The look on their faces was full of life, but there was something in the man's eyes that gripped Eleanor's heart. It was a call to a past, now inescapably tied to the present, turning curiosity into an urgent thirst for truth. Determined, Eleanor decided that there was no more room for delays. The exploration of the house on the hill had to happen. Warnings from the villagers, subtly threatening about the dangers and misadventures, echoed incessantly, but they were countered by Hugo's growing concern. "Eleanor, you shouldn't do this. The house carries shadows that could be dangerous." However, these words did not break her resolve. On that fateful day, as they walked toward the house, something in the atmosphere changed. The trees emitted sounds strangely similar to distant whispers, enveloping them both in a chill that ran down Eleanor's spine. She and Hugo reached the entrance of the property, both feeling the gravitational and heavy flow of energy from the now visible walls. Between her fierce curiosity and her fears, Eleanor's determination pushed her forward. The mystery was within reach, and the promise of revelations guided each slow step of approach. As they passed through the rusty gates of the property, an inexplicable sensation settled in both Eleanor and Hugo's hearts. The air grew thick. Every breath was an effort that lent weight to the soul. Shadows cast upon the walls of the house formed shapes dancing to the rhythm of an invisible and painful symphony. The oppressive atmosphere surrounded them, as if the house were alive, witnessing every calculated move. Eleanor moved cautiously, exploring the rooms imbued with dust and history. Every corner carried traces of what once was. In one room, Eleanor found a stack of photographs covered in soot. As she wiped the dust off one of them, the face of a young woman caught her attention. It was her grandmother, radiant, beside a man she didn't recognize. Joy and sadness danced in the woman's eyes, reflecting an untold story. Eleanor felt overwhelmed by a wave of emotions, as if those lost images could finally narrate the tales hidden in the dust of time. As she examined the photos, Eleanor began to hear whispers, echoes of voices reverberating along the walls. They were fragments of conversations, lost laughter, and at times, muffled sobs. It was as if the house was unveiling parts of a story, suffocated by silence. She felt drawn to these voices, as though they were currents pulling her irresistibly to learn more about her grandparents and what had truly happened there. Nearby, Hugo watched, moved by a growing anxiety. He felt that Eleanor's search was awakening something hidden and dark within the time-worn walls. Fear grew inside him, and the doubt about whether they should continue was overwhelming. "Eleanor, we need to leave. This house isn't safe," he pleaded. But Eleanor's determination was relentless and unwavering, even in the face of the unknown. As she explored further, Eleanor was drawn to a dark corner of a room. Amidst old and forgotten objects, she found an ancient journal. Barely containing her anticipation, she opened it. The yellowed pages were filled with notes in meticulously drawn handwriting. As she read, a series of dark secrets began to unfold before her. The journal detailed stories of tragic events that marked the village of Holloway. Disappearances, broken joys, and shattered alliances made up a grim portrait of the past lived by her grandparents. Every word written weighed on Eleanor's heart like stones, pressing down on her anxious soul. She sensed she was unearthing stories that many would prefer to keep forgotten. Seeing his friend absorbed in the journal, Hugo tried to pull her back to reality. "Eleanor, maybe we should stop. These secrets could bring us trouble," he warned. But he saw that her determination was an unstoppable force he could barely tame. Eyes locked, Eleanor met Hugo's gaze, her look intense with fervent decision. "I need to know the truth, Hugo. I can't leave this behind." Her voice trembled with emotion, but her resolve was clear. Discovering what had truly happened to her family had become more than a personal quest. It was a necessity, a mission that could not be renounced. As the tension between them grew, the house seemed to awaken with the imminent revelation. The shadows on the walls began to mold into shapes, evoking figures from the past that took life and form before them. Eleanor felt a chill run up her spine, but there was something in her that urged her to keep going. The certainty was that the truth was too close now, even if it meant facing the dangers the house tried to conceal. A moral choice now presented itself to her: to continue the search for justice and answers, or to protect those she loved, leaving unwanted truths buried. The decision wasn't easy, but the need to decipher her history was a burden she was finally willing to bear. With the journal tightly in her hands, Eleanor prepared herself to face the consequences of her relentless quest. Eleanor found herself in direct confrontation with the apparitions that seemed to emerge from the inner shadows. The atmosphere inside the house became even more suffocating and dense, the air thick with tragedy and regret. The figures that materialized before her were familiar faces, specters of a family past that wished to share stories, but also brought with them a considerable weight of sorrow. Confused between fear and fascination, Eleanor listened to voices echoing in her mind, whispers of secrets she had once longed to know. However, a part of her trembled at the possibilities that the truth could be even more painful than she had imagined. The childhood memories, filled with tales of disappearances and tragedies, were now becoming tangible and terrifying. Hugo, standing by her side, couldn't hide his desperation. He watched Eleanor immerse herself in the shadows, realizing that in her attempt to uncover the truth about her family, she was becoming more and more lost. "Eleanor, you need to stop. This isn't going to end well," he shouted, but his voice echoed like a whisper amid the murmurs of the shadows. Eleanor's internal struggle only grew. She sought to understand her legacy, to know what had really happened, but began to realize that this pursuit of of knowledge could provoke her own destruction. The apparitions seemed to demand a high price for the truth, something that filled her with deep terror. The house, with all its mysteries, was becoming a prison. As the dancing essences continued around her, Eleanor confronted a cruel dilemma. The truth was within her reach, but at what cost? In the midst of doubt, she wondered if it was worth continuing, knowing that the knowledge could bring more pain than relief. The decision Eleanor had to make weighed heavily on her shoulders, and the house calmly awaited the choice she would make. As Eleanor moved forward through her memories and shadows, she became trapped in a web of tragic stories that seemed to define her fate. Despite her insatiable curiosity and ruthless investigation, the reality of the revelations brought unbearable pain. She realized that in seeking the truth, she was searching for a solace that could lead to her own end. Hugo, always on the sidelines, watched his friend consumed by the darkness. He knew his attempts to help were almost useless at this point. "Eleanor, come out of this house. This place isn't safe," he pleaded. But his voice was little more than a muffled scream among the crowds of voices from the park. With every passing moment, Hugo felt he was losing his friend to the mysteries that intertwined with her. Eleanor's internal battle had reached its peak. In the desire to understand the inexorable cycle of her childhood, she found herself faced with the complicated consequences of her discoveries. The apparitions not only revealed truths, but also demanded compensations that zigzagged like their shadows across the floor. As the shadows became denser and more oppressive, Eleanor made a decisive choice: to confront the darkest fears of all and dive into the turbulent waters of the revealed truth. Beside her, Hugo remained watchful, unable to help her, but still deeply caught in the whirlwind. He knew that Eleanor's search was affecting more than just herself. It was altering all the shadows of their past lives. When Eleanor reached the end of her confrontation with the apparitions, the house revealed itself to be darker and denser than could have been imagined. In a state of despair, Eleanor understood that she had become part of the stories that would now echo through Holloway. By choosing truth over complacency, Eleanor was trapped in her own narrative, a vital part of a tale she had created herself. Hugo, standing at the doorway, reflected on Eleanor's fall into darkness. He knew that dangerous adventures come at a cost, one that was now reflected in his own experience. But his memories of Eleanor, of her search for answers, would become the living legend that would warn future generations of the shadows Holloway would always whisper. In the village, the echo of Eleanor's lament became evident. The whispers about the house and about her and Hugo's story spread, serving as a new warning for those who dared to investigate the secrets of the mists. The shock of the flash between past and present outlined a legacy of frightening truths better left undisturbed. Share this story if you believe that some secrets belong to the darkness. Leave your comments about how a quest for answers has shaped or redefined your own life. Subscribe for more stories that explore the mysteries that sleep in the shadows of the human spirit.